Hello, and welcome to Friends in Faith. My name is Fritz. I'm the Director of Adult Faith Formation here at St. Philip the Apostle Parish. We're continuing on in our series on apologetics, and today are going to be discussing purgatory. Now, as someone who recently earned a master's in theology from a Christian school, purgatory is a concept that I've had to defend many times. Purgatory is not accepted by Christian denominations because it is not named by name in the Bible. However, as we go through our video, we'll see that there are numerous biblical references to the need and presence within our souls to become reconciled with God in heaven, and thus justifying the idea and concept of purgatory. Now, probably best to describe what purgatory is first by describing what it is not. And that is a location. We can tend to think of purgatory as a place we are sent, some sort of afterlife work camp. But this is artistic license. In the same way that we have people that give us the image of Eve actually eating an apple, which she didn't, we also have the image of purgatory as some sort of spiritual prison we are assigned to after our deaths. We see this in a lot of Hollywood movies and TV shows, where purgatory is shown as a place where people have to physically work off their sins. People who may be sent back down to earth to complete some sort of unfinished business that they have. Or perhaps they are tasked with saving someone else's soul as a means of reconciling their own. But again, this is artistic license that actually doesn't correspond to any theology actually about purgatory. So then what is purgatory? Well, very simply, purgatory is a cleansing of our souls in preparation for heaven. It takes place after our death and at the time of judgment. To quote the Catholic Catechism, all who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfect, are indeed assured of their eternal salvation. But after death, they undergo purification, so as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter into the joy of heaven. Now, the Church identified this process as purgatory from the Latin word purgare, which does mean purifying, as a means of separating it from the punishment of people who are damned to hell. This is a very different process. But it does also beg the question of just why is purgatory even necessary? And this is where we do find justification within the Bible. The first thing that we need to understand is that sin cannot enter heaven. Again, we take this right from the Bible, the book of Revelations, chapter 12, verse 27. In describing the kingdom of heaven, nothing unclean will enter it, nor anyone who does abominable things or tells lies. Only those will enter whose names are written in the Lamb's book of life. So the Church does believe that there are people who die completely in God's grace and are taken directly into heaven. However, we're human and we are imperfect creatures, and most of us are going to carry some sort of sin on our soul when we pass, and thus are in need of the purification that is referenced here. Now, there are a number of references in the Bible also to salvation coming to our souls, often through a cleansing of fire. Now, this is something I don't want you to be worried about. A cleansing with fire can sound very ominous, but it's actually a very proactive process. Again, looking at the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 13, it will be revealed with fire, and the fire itself will test the quality of each one's work. But if someone's work is burned up, that one will suffer loss, and the person will be saved, but only as through fire. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is not any reference to punishment. Fire can have a very scary connotation. However, even within our own world, we can see fire as a great purifier. When doctors and hospitals will need to sterilize instruments, it is done through heat. If there's ever a time where you want to get rid of bacteria that is in water, you boil it. So we don't want to look at fire in this capacity as something damaging, but rather as a cleansing agent. Now, finally, our last reference to the Bible actually does go towards the forgiveness of sin in the afterlife. This actually comes from the Old Testament, 2 Maccabees chapter 12, verse 46. Thus he made atonement for the dead, that they might be absolved from sin. Now, this verse not only justifies the concept of purgatory, but it also explains why we are called to pray for the dead. The judgment of the dead is not automatic, and thus we have the opportunity to pray for them to receive the salvation and communion with God that they desire. So, as we reflect on these verses and these concepts of purgatory, let's begin to look at purgatory not as a burden or as a punishment, but rather a revelation and renewal in our relationship with God. Now, one final note about that last verse from Maccabees, and that is because our Christian brothers and sisters may not be aware of it, for the simple reason that Maccabees and certain other books are not included in Christian Bibles. You may not be aware of this, but in his split with the church in the 16th century, Martin Luther actually removed 14 books, including 1st and 2nd Maccabees, from the Bible that did not correspond with the new Protestant theology that he was preaching. So you may want to take a look at your own Bible and make sure that you do have the Catholic version. In the meantime, please do enjoy your discussion, and God bless.